Right now, Oregon is an outlier. Instead of using an honor system, the state says you have to prove you're vaccinated before taking off your mask indoors. No surprise, a lot of people have a lot of problems with this vaccine passport policy.
My constituents really want the governor to allow the honor system.
The message is very clear. She needs to rescind the order immediately.
And we've been talking a lot about Portland's plan to sweep more homeless camps. But one of you wanted to know, where do the people living in those camps go after they're cleared?
Some people do go to a shelter, but most of them don't.
Here's the story.
Nice cameo there. That was KGW editor Dave Andrews ripping off his mask in that open. That was awesome. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Story. Dan, you might have noticed, is not here. He's taking some much needed time off. So I'm going to be here for the next week and a half or so. So just buckle in and basically fear not, because he is coming back. And in the meantime, our show remains the same. All the ways to contact us are at the bottom of your screen per usual. Email thestory@kgw.com. You can reach out on social media with that hashtag #HeyDan. We are ridiculously accessible, and your questions, as you'll see, drive this show. So let's get started. All right, tonight's big story, technical term here is a doozy. We are talking about vaccine passports. We're talking about the call for Governor Brown to drop that policy. And we've also got the threat of a lawsuit if she refuses. On top of all of that, there's a new report out that says Oregon is, wait for it, the only state in the nation asking you to prove that you're vaccinated before demasking indoors. Everyone else, every other state, apparently, according to this report, honor code. We have a lot to dive into. So let's start with Tim Gordon.
All right, Tim Gordon joining me now. So Tim, let's get right to this, because the Governor Kate Brown, got a letter, and that letter basically contained a big demand. I mean, so what can you tell us about this right now?
Well, Maggie, first of all, the letter came from the Freedom Foundation, which is a conservative group, a national group. They got an Oregon office, and they are demanding of the governor that she rescind the order that requires vaccination verification of people if they want to go into businesses and churches and that unmasked. Now, remember, just yesterday, House Republicans basically demanded the same thing. They say get rid of that mandate as well. They gave the governor a letter just yesterday on this.
Gotcha. And the governor is well aware, as are we, as are most people, that this is really unpopular. But now we have this kind of organized pushback. That letter, the Freedom Foundation, they're threatening a lawsuit. They're saying this is unconstitutional and they want to take the state to court if it doesn't go away. I mean, so this is really ramping up. What's the governor's response to this now?
You know, I talked to her on Monday and I got a statement today and nothing's really changed. She said she's committed to refining the process. Those are her words, basically. But she's not talking about getting rid of this mandate. She says, you know, businesses have a choice. They can either, you know, do the vaccine verification, or they can just keep their mask requirements in place for everyone. So she's saying the businesses have options. Again, she's talking about refining the policy, but not getting rid of it, Maggie.
Do we have any idea beyond those options which exist now what refining the policy means?
You know, I really don't. We haven't had a chance to get back and ask her that. What does that mean? You know, I guess in one sense, though, she's talked about how the Blazers got this deal that they get 8,000 people in the arena starting tomorrow night. And that's because they'll have vaccinated only sections. So that's an example, actually, that she gave of refining the process where that's actually doing some good for a business.
Okay, gotcha. And then one last question for you. I mean, amid all of this, you found out, and maybe this is no surprise to a lot of people, that a lot of businesses in Oregon are not enforcing this anyway, right?
Right. Maybe not a surprise, but I'm a little surprised at the scope of it, really, because, you know, I called and asked, and we have video to show Costco, Walgreens. They're not asking for verification of vaccination, and they also don't have a 100% mask requirement for their stores. So they are not following state rules right now. Those are heavy hitters for sure.
All right. Yeah. Really interesting to watch this play out in real time. Definitely. Tim Gordon, thank you so much.
You bet, Maggie.
All right, let's dive into this issue more with a Worth Your Time segment tonight. So tonight, we want you to check out a Willamette Week piece about the national pushback this vaccine passport policy in Oregon is getting. Willamette Week reporting 10 national business associations, industries from like grocery stores to truck stop owners. They signed a letter to the Biden administration, calling Oregon's vaccine check requirement, quote, alarming, especially because they report, Willamette Week reports, Oregon is the only state doing this. Some states have dropped mask mandates altogether, and among those who only want vaccinated people demasking, the rest are using the honor system. Oregon is reportedly the only one asking you to show your card and prove it. You can also read about what happened when Governor Brown asked business owners if they want to be in the business, see what we did there, of checking your vaccine status at the door. Again, that full story is in Willamette Week, and we think it's worth your time. All right, on that note, let's count some vaccines, shall we? Cue the giant numbers. More than 2.26 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose at this point. That works out to about 64.7% of the state's adult population, which is the metric that Oregon is using to determine when to reopen. And then over in Washington, more than 4.21 million people have gotten at least their first dose, which works out to be nearly 68% of the state's adult population. Both states at this point are waiting to hit 70% before they fully reopen. All right, time now for a viewer question. Andrew had a nice two-parter. Love this one after last night's show. He wrote, I'm curious as to where did the people in the 50 sweeps per week go? Also, when they call it a sweep, what's the average number of campsites involved? Great question. So before we dive in, a quick recap on the story that he's talking about. After largely halting this practice during the pandemic, the city of Portland announced that starting this week, crews will be clearing more homeless camps. That said, how many more specifically? That's a little bit fuzzy. Pre-COVID, the city cleared about 50 camps per week on average. That's where Andrew got that number. After COVID hit, it was more like 5 camps per week. As of tonight, 13, more than a dozen, 13 exactly, are slated to be cleared. We just got that number in. We will keep you posted. So I'll clear up one of the questions right now. The term sweep, which actually we'll explore on its own in a minute, has traditionally referred to crews clearing just one camp. That camp can have many tents, but it's kind of a singular thing. On to your other question as to where people go, we took that to 2 very informed people, very informed on this topic. First up, a man named Gary Barker. He is the lead ambassador for the newspaper Street Roots. And you'll see he's talking to us from his apartment, meaning he has housing now. We actually just got some furniture right before he talked to us, but he spent roughly a decade on the streets in Portland. And suffice it to say, his camps were cleared many times. Here's his take on Andrew's question, which again is, where do people go when their camps are cleared?
What's the answer to that? What happens in your mind?
Yes, some people do go to a shelter, but most of them don't because the shelter system is so rigid. It doesn't fit the makeup of people today. You know, nobody wants to be told what to do or told one time to lay in bed it's just too rigid. Now, the only shelter that I've been to that I appreciate to this day, and that was Do Good by Noma. They have a very low barrier shelter, and they work with you to get ahead. You know, they assign a case manager with you, and they really lay back and they don't force themselves. They let you think about it, and you know, you can lay there and sleep if you want to, but eventually you're gonna get tired of just laying around doing nothing, right?
You don't like the word sweeps, right?
No, I do not.
Why not?
And the only reason why I don't like them because the actions that come with it are somewhat unhumane to me. Because when you take another human being and treat them that way, like disrespectful and rude, and just take all their belongings that they own in the whole wide world and dispose of them, and tell them they're gonna get them back, which you don't, you never see it again. And leaves you kind of frustrated, angry, and it tears at your self-esteem. It makes you feel like less than or different than.
We wanted to explore that second question, by the way, because we've heard mixed reviews on that point. So the city, you should know, refuses to call them sweeps. They call them removals, or they say they're clearing camps. I've also met people on the streets who actually, they've told me, prefer the term sweeps because they believe the process is inhumane. So in their minds, why use nicer verbiage to hide that? Just an interesting point. We wanted you to be informed. Okay, next we want you to hear from Kim James. She is with Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare, and actually she runs their street outreach teams. That's 3 teams of 2 people who go out roughly 5 days a week and talk to people in camps often just before those camps are cleared. Each team makes contact with hundreds of people per year, and James had a different take on where exactly people go when these camps are cleared.
What happens in your experience?
As of our last reporting, we were over 68% of individuals who decided to take advantage of the opportunities through either our intensive street engagement program or our mental health street outreach program. We also have, some federal HUD funding through our PATH program. So while it's not an overnight phenomena, it does happen, and we work with an individual who is able to, work their way back into the system. And once they decide, even after they decide, the wraparound services are there. So our goal is to not only house new people, but keep those that we have housed inside.
Gotcha.
Hopefully
So
that answered your question.
I think it does. So I just want to make super clear that
Okay.
68% number, you're saying that many people in your experience, based on the reporting Cascadia has done, maybe not immediately, but end up taking advantage or connecting with services and getting placed into some sort of housing as a result of making contact with Cascadia at that time.
Right. So I think it's not just making contact. We go out, our outreach teams are out on the street. We're connecting with folks. We keep going back to connect with those individuals. We continue our processes. Some folks have taken years. Some people have taken days. So we continue to work with those people until they are ready. And I think that's part of the difference. We stay with you from the day we meet you on the street to the day we get you inside, and then sometime after to make sure you're stable. So I think that
We'll have much more from James throughout the week, including her perspective on how much homelessness actually has increased throughout the pandemic. The data on that we've reported will likely take several months, if not more than a year at this point, to calculate. But she has some really interesting thoughts. You'll want to hear it. Again, that's later this week. But in the meantime, I want to remind you about our Hey Help campaign. We love our themes here. This week, we are highlighting Cascadia Behavioral Health Care, and we're asking you to consider donating to help support the services that Kim just described and that they provide for our most vulnerable community members, people who are actually living on our streets and who are grappling with homelessness. So right now, just open the camera on your phone like you're going to take a picture and then point it at this QR code on your screen. It will take you to a donation link. And we're calling this, by the way, a micro donation drive. So feel free to give any amount. Seriously, no matter how small, it all helps. And each week, we're going to highlight a different cause. So if you know of a nonprofit or an organization in need, let us know with that hashtag, HeyDan.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. We asked Oregon Senate Republican leader if he thinks extremism in the GOP is dividing the party.
This is an argument within the Republican Party, and we'll work through it.
And 4 years ago today, tragedy on a MAX train.
All the people in Portland are so heartbroken over it. We're part of that.
We'll go into the KGW vault when the story continues.
Welcome back. I just jogged back to this spot because I was reading so many of your tweets and your emails. We do that throughout the show, so keep them coming with that hashtag hey Dan, I'll get it, or email the story at kgw.com. We're checking them now. And by the way, I want to talk about one of our favorite subjects here on the story. It's a little segment that we've kind of dubbed the elephant in the room, and it's about the Oregon Republican Party. You might remember we started paying attention, kind of special attention, to them earlier this year when the official arm of the Oregon GOP published a referendum calling the insurrection on January 6th a false flag. Some elected Republicans in the legislature condemned that statement, and we started seeing, as a result, or at least after that, kind of a split between the party heads and those actually in office. And at that point, the party leadership was made up of people kind of behind the scenes and party insiders, not elected lawmakers. Well, things have now changed because the party selected new leaders, including 2 state senators who are considered among the farthest of the far right. And then earlier this month, other Republicans in the Senate introduced a bill that would basically force the GOP chairman, Senator Dallas Hurd, to resign from one of the jobs, either his elected post or he has to step down if this bill passes as GOP chairman. So to anyone looking at this from the outside, it seems like there is a divide between some of the more extreme elements of the party and kind of the more traditional conservatives. And earlier this week, Dan, before he went on vacation, got some perspective from the inside. He talked to Senate Minority Leader Fred Girod.
I'm wondering how you feel right now with the strength and unity of the Republican Party.
Well, I could ask you a question. Are you married?
I am, yeah.
Well, do you ever have an argument with your wife?
Sure, yes.
Okay. This is an argument within the Republican Party, and we'll work through it. We have in the past, and we'll continue to do so in the future.
Do you think it is the right move to have somebody who is an elected leader be the head of the GOP while the elected leaders already decide who is going to kind of be their leadership within Salem?
He was duly elected. The PCPs elected Dallas Hurd. And I mean, that's just the way it is. That isn't exactly what I think should. I just don't want to go there. This isn't the questioning we signed up for. I know that you want to ask these kind of questions, but the party to me is the most sacred thing that I got right now. And I'll be damned if I'm going to try to split it up. And I just think these questions are designed to split the Republican Party up, and I'm not going to do it.
Well, I'm only asking it because this was already broached by a bill that was proposed to make leaders choose between elected office and GOP leadership.
But that bill got pulled.
But it was written, and I didn't write it. And it was written by Republicans, and that's why I bring it up.
That's right.
So I'm not trying to divide the party. I'm only trying to ask questions about things the party is currently doing and asking if you think, as one of the leaders, it's the best path forward.
I don't think confrontation within the Republican Party is the best approach. I believe very strongly in the 11th commandment that Reagan set forth. And therefore, I just don't think I need to speak ill of anybody. I would like to say one thing. I have historically, I'm old school, and Peter Courtney's old school, and we tend to do things kind of differently in the sense that we believe that the parties should work together, and we try to do the best that we can for the good of the people. And right now, both sides have got extremes that don't want to do that anymore. And so.
All right. So to that last point, Senator Girod told Dan that he thinks his political career is winding down. What do we mean by winding down? Well, he is not planning to run again after this term ends. All right, let's change gears here. Today is a pretty somber anniversary in Portland. 4 years ago today, Jeremy Christian stabbed 3 men on a MAX train, killing 2 of them. And I'm sure you're familiar with the story by this point, but just to recap, those men stepped in to defend two black teenage girls from Christian, who was harassing them with hate speech on that MAX train. Christian then took out a knife and stabbed the men. Talijan Nomkai Meche and Ricky Best died. Micah Fletcher survived. And now we're going to take a look back into the KGW vault and listen to some of the witnesses, some of the victims, and supporters at the time that we talked to back when this happened.
I've seen people getting killed before. I've seen car wrecks. I've seen all of that. I have never seen and have never been prepared for two men knifed down in an attack.
All the people in Portland are so heartbroken over it. We're part of that, you know, and God bless the families. God bless the families.
This is really heartwarming to see everybody come together like this and show support for the memorial and all of that. Those guys were heroes. Serious business.
But these three individuals, I think Ricky, Talisan, and Micah, 53-year-old, 23 and 21, all in their relative prime of life. One parent, husband, another a young man just getting ready to face life with a new job, another one starting off. Innocent people who gave their lives for people that they didn't know, who were different, and who they did not have to give a damn about.
I got stabbed in the neck on my way to work randomly by a stranger I don't know for trying to just be a nice person. Like, I don't know what to do after that, you know? I'm healing. That's what I'm doing. As much as I can, in whatever way I can.
That was Micah Fletcher, the lone survivor there. So we're going to show Jeremy Christian now for the first time in this segment. Last year, he was convicted of murder and attempted murder, 2 counts of murder, I should say. And he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So we checked, quick update, he is currently in 2 Rivers Correctional Facility in Umatilla, Oregon. And we asked, he is in the general population. Crazy to look back on that. All right, keep sending us your questions and your comments with the hashtag HeyDan. I'm going to read a few of them when we finish the story next. A lot of comments here. You might have heard, by the way, we launched the Story Weekly newsletter. It's got all the stuff that you might have missed on the show, and there's an easy way to subscribe. Subtle hint behind me. Just open the camera on your phone, get out of the way there, and point it at this QR code. It'll take you to a page where you can sign up. And then you can also go to kgw.com/newsletter. I just love how small it is. Pick up your phone and follow us on Twitter at The Story and use the hashtag HeyDan. All right, a couple of comments here. So Eileen and Tim wrote in and said, just because Oregon is the only state to require verification of vaccine status doesn't mean it's a bad idea. They went on to say, we were also the first state with a bottle bill. Should that be rescinded? Don't think it's nearly as controversial, but we see your point. We're just reporting that we are the only state because we think it's interesting, but interesting argument there. All right. Dennis wrote in and said, and I've wondered this too, now that vaccination cards are becoming important for access to various events, will pictures of our cards on our phones be acceptable, or is the actual card required? So the state has said, the OHA has said, that a picture on your phone is acceptable. And that's just because maybe you don't want to carry that precious card around with you everywhere you go. Dennis, to your question, I've been nervous and I've been carrying it around with me if I think I'm going to need it, but I also have a photo on my phone. And I think as we all kind of settle into this new normal, a photo on your phone sounds like, according to the state, it should be acceptable. So I get the nerves, but it sounds like the photo should work. All right, so we had a couple people write in about the homelessness stories we've been doing. Matthew had a good question. He said, if people on the streets are swept, do they have any options as to a safe place or places to relocate their shelter? Does the city have property that might be designated as a safe zone for the homeless to set up camp while they wait for a better situation? Not really. I think what you're asking about is kind of organized outdoor tent camps. They do have those, but none where it's just kind of like open season that you can go and wait and set up your tent. It's an interesting idea. We've heard that people want more organized outdoor camps. A lot of people living on the street want that. What you're describing kind of to a T doesn't exist right now, but hey, keep coming up with those ideas. Send them to us, send them to your city officials, send them to those in charge who are trying to grapple with this monumental problem. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching The Story. Reach out with your questions and comments as always. The News with Laurel Porter is up next.